session, we are going to look at the poem by John Keats, Ode to a Nightingale. Now, this is a very well-known poem. It's one that I'm sure each one of us has read at some point or the other, maybe in school, maybe in college, maybe for our own pleasure, but it is not unknown to anybody, I'm sure. So we're going to revisit this poem. I'm the speaker today. I'm the presenter. I guess everyone knows my name, but for those who don't, I'm Mohini Khot. Keats was my favorite poet once upon a time. And I think this might be true for many of us because Keats is a kind of teenage time favorite. You know? When we are at our romantic best, when we love emotions and, the kind of poetry that the romantics wrote, I think is very attractive to the adolescent mind. And so Keats was one of my favorite poets. Now, here is a portrait of him. By the way, I want to thank Priyana for quickly putting this little slideshow together because I lost my PPT that I had made. And at 1 o'clock today, I had to phone her and say, look, just put something together. Let's just have the poem, on screen. And she very quickly put this together for me. So, Priyana, many thanks. Now, a little bit about John Keats to get the date perspective. So, born 31st October 1795 and died 23rd Feb 1821. Born in Edmonton, London, died in Rome. Now, Keats lived in London, all right? Wordsworth, we always associate with the Lake District. That's where he lived. His father was an ostler at an inn, and the inn was owned by his father-in-law. So when his father-in-law died, he became the owner of the inn. And in fact, he died while handling a horse. He had apparently gone to see the children at their school, and he came back and fell off the horse and died. So he died young, the children were very young, and their mother died soon after. So Keats and his siblings were parentless, as it were, at a very young age. And his parents had been very ambitious for them. They had wanted to send them to Eton or Harrow. Now, I don't know how realistic a hope this was for them, but it was so. But they realized they couldn't afford it, and therefore they went to an affordable school. But I just wanted to say that, just to let you know that education was something that was on their minds, that they valued. And Keats went to school, did well in academics. And when he finished school, he was apprenticed to a surgeon and apothecary in Edmonton. He was ready to practice. He was qualified to practice. But then he decided that he wanted to be a full-fledged poet. Not a surgeon who also wrote poetry, but a poet, all right, full-fledged. And that was his choice. So in 1816, he got his first poem published, that is O Solitude, which was a sonnet. Now, you must have noticed from the dates, 1795 and 1821, that he died very young. In fact, he didn't even reach his 26th birthday. So he died as a 25-year-old. And in those few years that he has given us enough poetry to remember him and to allow him to be an important name in the canon of English literature. So I think that speaks very highly of the quality of his poetry, because certainly the quantity is not very much. Our second publication was in 1817, a book of poems, a collection of his poems, which unfortunately didn't really get noticed very much. 1818, 1819, this was the year that, critics like Robert Gittings have called the living year, because that was the year in which his best poetry was written. And if you read the list, of the poems that he wrote in the spring of 1819, it seems that everything that we remember him for was written then. So his brother Tom developed tuberculosis. And at first it was John and his brother George who were nursing him. But then George and his wife, Georgiana, went away to the United States. They immigrated. And then it was only John, who was the caregiver for Tom. There was no cure for TB in those days. And John Keats, as a young man, had to watch this even younger man dying. So this is something which you notice in his poetry, that, he's very anguished about pain and disease, especially in young people. And this is a terrible fact of life that he poses. He says, this is what life is. It's a place where young men die. So there is that pain. Now, Keats is a romantic, and the romantic period starts with William Wordsworth. And the date we usually use is 1798, which is the date when the lyrical ballads were published. Now, the lyrical ballads, critics have called this a revolution, a literary revolution. Now, when you think of Wordsworth and the kind of poetry he wrote, which is kind of soft and pretty and lyrical and maybe tame, you might think the word revolution is kind of out of place. But it is little other than a revolution. It is a revolution because the kind of poetry that Wordsworth decided should be written, could be written, and that he wrote is so different from the kind of poetry that was being written in the 18th century. So 18th century poetry, and this is Dryden and Pope and that lot, I think possibly you had to be well educated to be able to read and understand that poetry. The poetry is more or less urban, it is sophisticated, it is male-oriented. But what Wordsworth said was that poetry should be accessible to every human being. And one thing that levels all of humanity and makes them all equal is the emotions. Because in terms of emotions, all human beings are the same. Then there's no upper class and lower class, educated, uneducated. Even an illiterate person should be able to listen to a poem and understand it. Now, the Romantics are known for their short compositions, right? I mean, I know Wordsworth wrote the Prelude, which is agonizingly long, but they are at their best in their short poems. They are very sensitive, and you will find that the hallmark of romantic poetry is its emotionality. They have tremendous capacity to feel, and the feeling is very intense, so that the words I like to use are the agony and the ecstasy, because they are able to feel sorrow so intensely, and they're able to feel happiness also so intensely. And possibly the beauty of their poetry is this emotionality. They also love beauty, per se, and Keats and Shelley particularly love beauty, and Wordsworth, of course, identifies beauty in nature. Nature is beautiful. Okay, so I think we're going to talk about some aspects of Romanticism as we go along, but let's start reading the poem. Okay, so Friana, let's go to stanza 1, please. Okay, this is a copy of the manuscript, by the way, of Ode to a Nightingale. Yes, next. Okay, now this is how it goes. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though a pin or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and lethwards had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. I hope I didn't massacre the poem, because I would like to say that for the Romantics, beauty in their compositions is an essential. So the poems are always beautiful. They sound beautiful. Now, what's happening in stanza 1? This is during the period when Tom was very ill and Keats was in London nursing him close to the hospital where he was being treated. And one evening, he was sitting in a garden in Hampstead. Now, a friend of Keats's called Brown says that it was in his house, which Keats was using. And he was sitting under a plum tree when he heard the nightingale singing. And he wrote this poem about what he heard. Someone else said it was the garden of the Spaniards in whatever. He was in a garden, it actually happened, and he wrote about it. Now, another aspect of romantic poetry is its authenticity, its sincerity. They are truth tellers, they will tell it as it is. Also, the poetry is very subjective, very personal. So they're not bothered about what others think or feel about a certain thing. They are involved in expressing themselves. Also, you will see that poetry of Dryden and Pope and all that are, in a way, theatrical. They're meant for an audience, a certain audience. But romantic poetry is not designed for an audience. It is the outpouring of the heart. What Wordsworth says, the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling. That's what poetry is. So when someone feels something very, very strongly and it overflows, as it were, it is so powerful that it finds expression. It finds expression as relief to the person who feels it. But it is not meant to be heard as such. So you and I who read the poem are like eavesdroppers. We happen to hear. Okay? We happen to hear. Invariably, what is described is something that is inward rather than outward. So here is, now you can say Keats or you can say the speaker of the poem. Okay? So the speaker in this poem describes the state that he's in, which is a sort of slightly drugged effect. And I would use the word trance. It's as if he's in a trance. All right? As if he had taken drugs. But of course, he hasn't. Now, he's very happy for the nightingale that it sings of summer. Now, summer is the happy time, right? In a cold country like England, summer is the happy time, the happy season. So it's singing of happy times in full-throated ease. I love that expression, full-throated, nothing held back, that honest, sincere, authentic, genuine expression of what it feels. And the word ease, there's no effort. It's not trying hard to reach the right note or whatever. So Keats has said, if poetry come not as easily as leaves to a tree, it had better not come at all. So basically, either you are a poet or you are not. Okay? It's not like a person like Milton who studied to be a poet. Either you have the gift or you don't. Okay. So next stanza, please. Oh, for a draught of vintage that had been cooled a long age in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance and Provençal song and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blushful Hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim and purple stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. So what does he want? He wants to join the nightingale in the world of the nightingale. He wants to leave the world that he is in and go away with the nightingale. How is he to do this? Maybe he could drink and when he is drunk, fancy himself going off with the nightingale. So he wishes he could have some wine from the south of France, okay, with all the taste of summer and all that. And in the poem, there are many of these spondi, I think it's called, stroke, 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 beaded bubbles winking at the brim, very effective. And that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. So if only he could go away with the nightingale. In short, leave this world and join the nightingale's world. Next stanza, please, Rihanna. Fade far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known. So, what is it that the speaker would like to forget? Something that the nightingale has never known. Now, the premise is that the nightingale can sing so beautifully because it has only known happiness. It has been a life of unadulterated happiness. So, it only knows how to sing happily. But human beings know a further reality of negativity, pain, sorrow, death, and so on. What thou among the leaves hast never known. And what is that? The weariness, the fever, and the fret here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad last grey hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. So what is it that he's complaining about? The mortality of the human race and the transience of all things. Nothing lasts. Even young people die. How terrible that is. Now he says, where but to think is to be full of sorrow. Because what is life? What is man? Man is a mortal being. He has to die. There is no escape from that. You have wonderful things happening in life, but they don't last. All right? They don't last. Where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes. So beauty, personification here, a beautiful woman cannot keep her beauty. She ages, she grows old, she loses her beauty. Or new love. And also the lover who loved her for her beauty, I presume, cannot sorrow about his loss for very long either. So this is the terrible world in which the speaker lives. This is our world, the human world, where we grow old, we sicken, we die. And it's not only that old people die, young people die too. How terrible that is. So he wants to forget this world that the nightingale has never known. So he's made a case for two worlds, the world of the nightingale and the world of humanity. And he wants to go to the world of the nightingale. Next one, please. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his bards. Bacchus got of wine and celebration. But now he says, no, I will go, to the world of the nightingale, but not with the crutch of wine, but on the viewless wings of poesy. Now look at that, such beautiful lines in this poem. The viewless wings of poetry. He's going to fly by his poetic imagination. Poesy, poetic imagination. Though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with the tenderest. So he imagines that he has already gone. He is with the nightingale. And happily, the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry fays. But here, there is no light, save from what from heaven is with the breezes blown, through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. Here there is no light, it's dark. And the nightingale is a bird which is very rarely sighted. It is heard. You hear the song of the nightingale, but you often don't see the nightingale. It typically sits deep inside the foliage of a tree so that it is not seen, and it is dark. So the bird is not seen. And here there is no light. Now look at this line. Save what from heaven is with the breezes blown. Light comes with the breezes? Surely not. It is not blown by the breezes, but this is what he says. So we have a critic called Richard Fogel who talks about Keats's synesthesia. Okay? Sign meaning combination. So combining the sensuous experiences. Light is something that you see. It comes through space. But we are told that it's blown by the breezes. I mean, that could happen with scent, but not with light. So this is a very interesting mixing of the senses. Next stanza, please. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet because it's dark, remember? Nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs. But in embalmed darkness, guess each sweet wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild. So he cannot see the flowers, but he can guess because he can get the fragrance. White hawthorn, and these are the flowers that he senses are there. White hawthorn and the pastoral eglantine. Fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk rose, full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. So do you see this very sensuous description of the scenario, although it is dark? So these are not visual impressions. These are olfactory, right? This is what he smells. These are fragrances. Keats is known as the sensuous poet, the most sensuous poet among the romantics, right? The senses and what they perceive, he describes so beautifully. Shelley tends to become abstract. Keats doesn't. Keats is very concrete with his sensuous imagery. Next answer, please. Darkling, I listen. Now, this word darkling can have two meanings. It can be in the dark or dark bird. Okay? I listen. So he's listening to the song of the nightingale. And for many a time, I have been half in love with easeful death. Now, an accusation is very often made about the romantics that they're eternally talking about dying. And they want to die painlessly, the cowards, and so on, escapists. But who doesn't want to die painlessly? And the point here is that having had such a rich experience of the song of the nightingale, the fragrances in the garden. I mean, the garden provides the perfect backdrop for the song of the nightingale. And having had this experience, I think the poet is saying that he doesn't want to continue to live to again have a fall in perception, again face the ugliness, the disease, and all that. At this high point of experience, this is the point to be snuffed out. At that, zenith of sensuous perception. Called him soft names and many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath, now more than ever seems. So why does it seem rich to die now? Because the nightingale is singing, he is enjoying the sensation so much, to seize upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. So while the nightingale is pouring its soul abroad, singing with that full-throated ease, remember? So here, I think it's pretty clear that the nightingale has become a symbol of the artist. The artist who is completely committed, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy, still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain. To thy high requiem become a sod. Sod? Sod is a lump of earth, all right? Dead, with no life in it. So now is the time that he should die. He will be inanimate, dead, but the nightingale will continue its song. So at this moment of wonderful perception, sensation, at this high point, he would like to give up his life. Next stanza, please. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. How about that? Now, the human race, of course, is born for death. We are born to die. But he says, you are not born for death. You are immortal, immortal bird. Now, how is that? Doesn't the nightingale also die? Aren't all living creatures subject to death? But this is the way Keats looks at the bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. Okay, this is, I think, his personal interpretation at this point. He sees the nightingale as immortal because there have always been nightingales and they have always sung, and the song of the nightingale is always there. Now, of course, you and I, if we want to be pernickety now and say, hey, wait a minute, the nightingale has to die also, we would be right, he would be wrong, but this is his mood, all right? This is what the way he wants to see it. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth, when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien story from the Bible, which I think we all know, and Wordsworth's The Solitary Reaper is exactly about this. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Now, if you just look at the sheer beauty of the language, you know, you won't want to quarrel with the sense. You're willing to just go along on the surge of that beauty. So this song of the nightingale has always been heard. It was there in ancient times. It is there now. And often it has charmed magic casements. That is, people have heard the song and opened the window to listen better to the nightingale. In fairy lands forlorn, even in faraway lands. Okay? Fairy lands. Forlorn. Now, forlorn here means far away. Next stanza, please. Forlorn. The very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my sole self. Adieu. The fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu. Thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now 'tis buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? This is the concluding stanza of the poem. Forlorn. The very word is like a bell. All right? Forlorn. You know, lonely, remote, far away, without any person or relationship close to you. And he comes back to himself. Now he has been conjecturing, he has been imagining that he's going away with the nightingale, you know, into the world of the nightingale. And what is the world of the nightingale? It is the world of immortality. Okay? Now he's told us, thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. So Keats is that? Would you please mute whoever it is who had noise coming through? Okay, so one of the aspects of Romanticism is that the Romantic writers all yearned for immortality. Now, there's this very famous seminal book by David Perkins called the quest for permanence. And the quest for permanence is what all the romantics were engaged in. In what way can we can we can we trick the laws of life and somehow manage permanence, somehow manage to be immortal? Because that's what they're all searching for. Now, if you remember sonnets by Spenser and Philip Sidney and so on, I wrote her name upon the sand, but came the waves and washed it away. Remember? So it's very hard for 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 human beings to manage to do anything or make anything that will survive for long or forever. Everything is transient. But this is the agony that the romantics feel about the transience. Everything exists for a short time and then passes. Nothing lasts. And when they have something wonderful, they want to hold on to it forever. And they want to be there forever to experience that. And that is something that they try. He tries, doesn't he, to fly away with the nightingale. But can he manage it? No. He's trying to fool himself initially, but he can't do that. What was this experience? Was it a dream? Was he dreaming and has he now woken up? Or is he now asleep and was he awake then? Was it a waking dream? What is it? This vision of flying away with the nightingale. What was it? So it throws the whole experience into doubt now. Okay? So what was it? But we know what he wanted. He wanted the immortality that he associates with the bird. So the nightingale, now the bird symbol, the bird is a very oft repeated symbol in romantic poetry. And the two aspects of the bird, one is the song of the bird. The bird sings, so it is an artist. So in a way, the nightingale is like John Keats, right? A poet or a singer. And the other is flight, because a bird can just fly away, but a human being cannot fly away. He cannot escape this world and all its sorrow. He is doomed to remain and to experience all the pain that is associated with life. However, the Romantics did give a lot of credibility and credence to dream, nightmare, vision, reverie, all intuition, all these irrational things, which the 18th century would have scoffed at. The 20th century scoffed at. We scoff at. But they gave credence to it. They gave it some value. They validated it. They believed it meant something. The Romantic movement has been called a renaissance of wonder. So we notice that in these poems, some very actually ordinary things are glorified. A poem like Daffodils, for example. I mean, those of you who have seen daffodils, I'm sure we all have at some point. Are they really that gorgeous? Are they really that beautiful? Frankly, I think not. But you can find beauty in things. They say beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. We know how children, find little things so lovely. The Romantics are like little children who find beauty in the most ordinary things at times. You'll remember in Wordsworth's poems, the violet pops up more than once. The violet is a very small flower and it's a very shy flower. It's usually, behind or under something and you don't even see it usually. But he will comment even on the beauty of the violet. So it is, the Romantics have the eyes of a child, and they love recording all the beauty that they see. What they write is, as I said, very subjective, very personal, very inward. And the reader of a poem by the Romantics is like an eavesdropper. He has not written the poem for us. He has he's not waiting with bated breath while we read his poem and then comment on it. He has written it because he had this compulsive need to express himself. And once he has expressed himself, that's it. The poem remains in the world. Whoever reads it is like an eavesdropper. Okay, lastly, I mean, it's an ode, right? So that's an ancient Greek form. Um, the ode directly addresses someone or something. So the nightingale is addressed as you, thou, and it is a song of praise. It is a song of praise. So, I mean, this one is probably the most popular and most anthologized of all the um, odes that he has written. But usually we talk of the five great odes. Sometimes they say six also, if you count Indolence. But there is the Nightingale, the Grecian Urn, Autumn, Ode to Psyche, and Ode to Melancholy, right? So these are the great five odes, and this is the most popular one. Okay, I think I let the other aspects of Romanticism pop up during our discussion rather than listing them one after the other. So, Priyana, I think that's the end, right? We can close this now and have a little discussion. Yeah, okay. So you can unmute yourselves when you want to speak. Any comment over that?
Okay. I think, Prashant, please go ahead.
Okay. Actually, I will take a few minutes. First of all, I want to begin by saying that Mohini had an excellent presentation, very well presented, and the poem was read extremely well, very expressive and almost dramatic. I will have a few differences about Romanticism, which I'll skip today because I want to concentrate on the poem itself. And obviously, Romanticism is kind of movement about which you can't really have a generalization that applies to everyone. For example, Lord Byron is an exception to many things. So I'll focus on the poem. And the first thing I want to add, all these are simply supplementing what Mohini has said very, very ably, is that the poem is very highly elusive. Keats in the poem refers to a large number of mythological figures and even other poets. If you begin, for example, in the first paragraph itself, you have the reference to the dryad, the nymphs of the trees, then Lethe, which again is, a river of forgetfulness in the netherworld. Then, as you go ahead, in the second stanza, Hippocrene, fountain to the muses. And as you proceed further, you observe there is that line which refers to, in a sense, perhaps Keats was not aware of it. Othello, remember when Keats says, "This is the moment when I should die so happily." Now, that very much resembles Othello meeting Desdemona in Cyprus after the violent and stormy seas, and then saying, if you're now to die, I'd be most content. And ironically, that turns out to be true. But Keats may not have consciously used that. Nevertheless, there are quite a few references. Mohini herself pointed out a reference to Ruth, and immediately after that, there's a reference to the Gothic fiction. You see, the charm magic casement would refer to the Gothic novels in which the beautiful heroine was a captive to some wicked magician, and she could see things outside but could not really feel it. So I think that's one thing I would like to add, that the poem is very highly elusive. And Keats, let's not forget, was very knowledgeable about Shakespeare, and obviously Keats and Shelley were both, uh, and so was even Byron, but definitely Keats and Shelley, extremely knowledgeable in Greek mythology. And in that sense, both Keats and Shelley turn their backs upon Wordsworth and bring in a lot of complexity in the poetry. That is one thing I wanted to add. Secondly, I wanted to add that Keats here embodies the concept of art in the Nightingale, and that obviously is a recurrent theme in Keats's poetry. Art versus life. Mohini herself referred to Ode on a Grecian Urn, that clearly is an embodiment of the idea of the permanence of art as opposed to, shall I say, the transience of life. Uh, the other points that Mohini made are the ones with which I'll be very much in agreement, and there's no question of saying anything contrary to what she has said. But I thought I could add these things because, after all, in spite of all this spontaneity, Keats does, in many ways, give us something, to quote Clean Brooks, that is a well-wrought, piece, like a well-wrought urn, and that is something we can't entirely ignore. But I repeat, it was a very, very good presentation, and the poem was read extremely well, highly dramatic, and very expressive. Thank you. I think I've taken a lot of time.
Thank you, Prashant.
Can I ask Miss P to say something? Where's Miss P?
Yeah.
You're there. I can see you.
Yeah, here I am. Actually, I just wanted to comment on that last verse, where, in a sense, I see a sort of contradiction to that sense of permanence, because even the Nightingale song fades away. The Nightingale disappears into the deep woods, and that is why he questions whether the Nightingale was ever there at all. Did I sleep?
So,
Am I
yeah.
awake now?
So he does say, was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that moment, fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? So yes, it throws the entire experience into question, doesn't it?
Yes.
After being so intense about it, after making it so meaningful, so important, so satisfying, that this is the moment when he feels his life is complete and he can die. He may as well die at this point. And then to say that he's not sure if it
Yeah.
ever happened.
Exactly.
And that's quite delicious, isn't it? That's quite, I thought, because how do you deal with this kind of sensation and situation and thought? You know, we obviously have realized that the Nightingale is also not immortal, but for all practical purposes, the human ear does hear the Nightingale and has always heard its song. So it
There are a few other
takes
things.
it as something which has always existed, exists, and will exist.
The fact that he uses the word anthem there in that last verse,
Hmm.
that song was like
Miss P, come closer to the mic,
Yeah,
please.
anthem. Now,
yeah,
I
an
think that
adoration.
raises, yeah, even requiem, you know, anthem. It raises the level of the song, doesn't it, to
Yes.
something divine.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Thanks, Mohini. That was, and thank you for taking us back to Keats, which, as you said, takes us back to our teenage years and college days, and then teaching
Yes,
poem to students.
indeed. In fact, I remember in our first year of English honors at LSR, one of our teachers asked us who our favorite poet was. And I didn't know what to say because I thought, well, Keats is, who else, you know? And I thought everyone would say that. And they did indeed, except one girl said Swinburne, I remember. But, and the teacher poo-pooed that. She said immature. So she thought all of us were immature, basically. Keats, Swinburne, all immature. But anyway, Keats was iconic at that stage in life. That passion, that that intensity of feeling that he articulates was so attractive and was what was bubbling inside our young hearts, you know, struggling, as it were. We wanted to experience that, we wanted to articulate that, and Keats has done exactly that. So very, very precious poet for us at that stage.
Mo, Sheena has said something very sweet. I hope, Mohini, you can discuss other odes in the future. This was delightful and enchanting. So
Oh,
you have
thank
been
you.
asked to hold on to talk about those also later on.
Thank you. In fact, one day Sheena said, she said just one little poem for the entire session. But, and then I thought, oh, should I be doing all the 5 odes? But then I thought, no, then we'll be rushing from one to the other. I thought, let this be a calm, peaceful discussion of a little text.
And Uma has said practically the same thing, enjoying the reading and the interpretation. Thanks for the opportunity to revisit a favorite poem.
Thank you. And you know, Friana, it was who said one day, when we were talking about the calendar, maybe it was in our admin chat or something, she said, we haven't done poetry for such a long time. And when she said that, I thought of Indu Kulkarni, you know, who is kind of our poetry person. But she is in America and I think she's not even too well. I reached out to her, but she said, you know, it was a very short note saying maybe later, some other time, not too well, that sort of thing. So I thought, okay, um, you know, any of us can do some poetry. I remember Latika had done a couple of delightful sessions of poetry. One was war poems and one was sonnets, I remember. That was so lovely.
I think
And
Runa,
also, by the way, we
Runa
are
wants to
doing,
say something.
yeah, we are doing a lot of contemporary stuff all the time. It's contemporary fiction, contemporary non-fiction. So I feel the need to sometimes go to the classics. So
Runa,
it was
you're next.
very tranquil for me. Yes, Runa.
Runa, then Kaveri.
I just want to mention a point about the romantics.
Mhm.
See, you know, in perspective, this was also the period, as you said, the age of reason. Before that, you know, it was all reason, logic. I mean, that is what was glorified, order, and so on. And the age of the romantics also coincided with a lot of exploration of the mind and the consciousness. I mean, amongst the romantic poets, I mean, you had S.T. Coleridge, who was experimenting with opium. You had Edgar Allan Poe. You had so many of them who were all, you know, taking opium in those days was a thing. So, because it changed your state of consciousness and it opened up the mind to a lot of sensations and questions about what is reality. And if we can't be sure of the material world, that what can we be sure about? Is it our imagination? Is it all our mind? Is subjectivity everything? And so on. So these were questions which came and which were suppressed often, but which are arising even now. You know, since the 90s, a lot of work has gone on into psychedelics, for
Mm.
instance, which is linked to consciousness and the psyche. So it's getting a lot of importance now. However, I want to go back to this and say that Keats, I'm not saying that he was drugged or anything like that, but you know, it always seemed to me that the way he described his experience of the song was quasi-mystical. You know, when the lines between material reality and what he is living in his mind is blurred, and it is a moment of, you know, infinity, of eternity. You have Blake there also talking about it, you know, when you see infinity in a grain of sand, you know, and eternity in a flower, that kind of thing. So this was an experience which was actually very well expressed by all the romantics in some way or the other, even our staid Wordsworth and Tintern Abbey. I mean, you know, he did the same thing virtually. Tintern Abbey was Wordsworth, right? Or was that? No, no, that
Yes,
was
yes,
Tennyson.
it's, yeah,
Or
I'm
was it
just
Tennyson?
thinking what in Tintin Abbey, what are you referring to? You mean when he talks about physical, mental, and
I'm a
spiritual?
little cloudy about the details after so many years, but
Yeah.
I remember him, you know, seeing this and the feelings which well up in him and the things which make him think about, you know, and that is the reality of the experience. So even here and in most of Keats's odes, it's the experience which is what he's expressing. He transcends the what shall I say,
The
he transcends
physicality of the
yeah,
experience.
the immediate cause. he transcends it because it brings him onto discussing
A
a lot of
higher
other
plane.
wider things.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring out the, as I said, quasi-mystical aspect of it.
Yes, yes. Very true, because clearly the song is more than just the song,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the way it affects him, the way he responds, and the way his mind.
Yeah, and therefore, when
sort
you
of- yeah.
when you discuss things about, but the nightingale is also doesn't live forever, and so on and so forth, all those things fall by the wayside. They're details.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not important. What is important is the preciousness of the experience, which is very momentary and therefore even more precious. And I don't know, I do a lot of reading, so maybe I see everything of all that in it. But, it's a lot like what our mystics see. The true
Granted.
mystics, they also see
Granted.
similar.
Clearly, yes. I mean, the song, the way he listens to it, alone in the dark garden, and it just sort of
Totally
becomes
internal
something else and
experience,
something
yes.
much greater than what it merely is.
Merely.
Absolutely, yes.
Can I just add one sentence? And that is that this mysticism has also links perhaps with the romantic fascination for psychedelics.
Exactly.
Look at the way, they experimented with opium. In fact, Coleridge wrote Kubla Khan under the impact of opium. De Quincey was an opium eater.
Confessions of an opium eater.
So I think that is an important aspect. The romantics looked for the kind of experience that's not possible through the senses ordinarily. So the drugs.
In fact, if you look at it
Widening,
more,
widening the scope of experience.
Yeah.
more,
And the
in
limits
fact,
of
if you
consciousness,
look at
you're
the
expanding
last,
the limits of consciousness.
in fact, we look at it, Mohini, the last book that we did, the Covenant of say water.
Water.
The use of these poets was very much there. Openly, they would be rolling their.
Yes, yes.
And this is, I think, is been for years, of course, been misused later on, but it has been there for years and years as painkillers.
Yes, used very
Moment, think of
casually.
something else, etc.
Yes, used very casually.
Okay, can we have Latika?
I
She's
thought
there.
Kaveri wanted to say something.
Kaveri, okay, sorry,
Yeah.
Kaveri.
Yeah.
Apologies.
If I may.
Yeah.
Mohini, that was so beautiful. I wish I could have been a student in your class. You must really try to
The
form
ultimate
the
compliment. Thank
lessons for your students. I have to tell you, of course, that, coming from a science background, and in our time, you had to choose arts or science from class 9 onwards.
Yes, yes.
For me, so much of, this thing that your poetry that you're talking about is in the realm of something which is really complex, in some way esoteric, a much higher order of thinking it requires. And, in science, everything is fact-based, cause and effect. And whereas the world of literature is so abstruse, it is so and
like I keep telling my students,
this
is literature. 1 + 1 need not equal 2.
Right.
It can be 1 3/4. It can be 2 1/2.
Right.
And there's so many possible readings. It's not that only one answer would be correct. Of course, it has to be validated by the text. You can't just say anything. But
yes, because there's so much interpretation which is possible.
Exactly.
I would love to hear you with all the odes. You've done one. I would love to hear all the odes. And I wonder, have you ever read T.S. Eliot's Wasteland?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Someday you must discuss that, because that's an amazing poem, isn't it?
It is.
I think that's a very good idea.
And you know what T.S. Eliot said? He said that great literature communicates before it is understood. And the first time I read The Wasteland was when I was in school, and I did not understand it. But I thought I was awed by it. And then when I went to college, by the way, I also did science in school. So when I started up with literature in college, I was a little at sea. I didn't know
Yeah,
what
I can
was
imagine.
and what was expected of me. And I couldn't
Huh.
write long essays that were de rigueur and all that. Anyway, but then when we studied T.S. Eliot in our final year, and then I read what he had said, that great literature communicates before it is understood. I said, hey, that's exactly what happened to me, when I read The Wasteland. It's a great book.
And
I
I was a student of IIT.
yeah.
Guess Victor and I, we had a little bit of money. Victor had some money with him. We went to the stand all the way there, bookstore there, spent an hour and a half to 2 hours, and took just The Wasteland and came over.
Mhm.
That too far back. That's how much we were interested in literature. Okay,
Yeah,
then other guys. Latika is where's Latika?
Latika, yes.
Latika, please. We can't hear you.
I think Mukul should talk. She has raised her hand sometime
Oh
ago.
yeah, okay.
Oh.
Come on. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
When you
Apologies.
started, Mohini, you talked about Keats's brother and how he looked after his brother, and where in days where TV was full and final. So, do you think his obsession with this poem, with connecting the song with death, and I mean, that is very frail and, so temporary, was related to that? Or do you think he'd have produced such work if he had heard a Nightingale, even without his brother being in whatever
Well,
condition?
I mean, it is said that because of his brother's condition
Hmm.
and this being so close, his mother also died of TB, by the way.
Yeah,
And Tom died of TB,
TB.
and he himself got TB. I mean,
Yeah.
being so close to him. And he went to Rome for a warmer climate because the doctor said it might help, but he did die of it. So I think it must have heightened his sense of hopelessness about
Hmm.
human life.
About what he
Must
saw
have heightened.
in front
Because
of
it was
him.
so close. It was happening all around him. Even to him. He was
Because this
aware.
obsession with death, I mean, is it also a theme in his other
Not
poems? I
necessarily.
mean, I don't know. That's why I'm asking this linkage.
What is a continuous theme is human mortality versus permanence of art that you see in the Grecian urn. The urn is an example of permanence. But so the urn, which has a frieze on it, and there are human figures on it. There's a lover pursuing a woman and the woman running. And he says how beautiful it is and nothing will ever change. It will always be the same. But the lover will never catch the woman, right? That love will never come to fruition. So there is something lacking in that world of permanence, and there is something lacking in this world of transience, which fulfills where you can the warm passion and all that you can experience it, you can reach somewhere, but it won't last forever.
Yeah, so what you say makes me feel that he'd have said it irrespective of his brother's condition, because he
Yes,
had
but
these
maybe
experiences.
yes,
And, yeah.
but possibly with less intensity. That is all I'm suggesting. That possibly this experience so close to him must have intensified
Heightened it,
that
yeah.
realization.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
just as one thing, Mayank Agarwal has to go, so he has sent a note. Immensely enjoyed my first book club session. This is an IIT and I am a Calcutta guy. Good to know you're an LSR alumna, and so is my mom. Thank you for inviting me. I need to go about etc. But you have someone, because his mother was also a LSR student. Okay, Latika, you had something to say. Oh no,
Well,
okay, I like that.
all I can say is that when I read the poem, and a very good presentation, Mohini, very, very nice, full of feeling, that when I read the poem and I heard you speak, I put myself in the place of Keats. I made it personal. And I said, if I were young, his age, knowing that my family members have gone, knowing that perhaps death's not so far away, living in a place which is naturally very beautiful, beautiful nature, maybe listening to the Nightingale, maybe I would have felt the same. maybe I would have dealt with the idea of death in the same way. Maybe I would have shown my adoration for the nightingale, for nature. Maybe I would have been as conscious of fleeting time. And then at the end, maybe I would have asked myself, was this real or not? So I think I felt I was inside the poem.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's lovely. That's the way to experience a poem.
Ginny, what
Just-
about you, Ginny? Ginny, you have something to say? I can't hear you, Ginny. Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
well, I have no, I enjoy the comments of all these experts. I enjoy this so much. Mohini, it was a beautiful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Ginny. Okay, who else is there?
Okay.
Prashant is there. Prashant wants to say something. No.
And I'll be very, very brief. The point is that when Keats refers to the eternity of the nightingale, what he's saying is that the individual bird will die, but the
Yeah.
song will survive.
Yeah.
I think that's the point.
The song of the bird will remain.
Yeah.
Satish, I put up my hand a while ago.
Oh, okay. I missed it. I'm sorry. Please
No,
go ahead.
it's okay. I just, when everyone was discussing this thing about opium and so on, it reminded me of what Nissim Ezekiel had said to us. I used to know Nissim very well. And this was the time, do you remember this thing, LSD? That
Yes,
everyone
yes.
taking
Yeah.
it? Yeah. That sort of gave you hallucinations and
Yes,
I don't know.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
exactly. Yes.
And Nissim was trying to persuade all of us to try it because
Oh my God.
he said you will understand poetry so much better. I was horrified at the time, but that was Nissim, he did
Oh,
things
wow.
that were rather unusual. But it reminded me of that, that it was not just the opium and all in the 19th century, but there's, what the role that drugs have played and
Oh, yes.
the disaster they have, they've destroyed so many young people. But I just remembered suddenly Nissim telling all of us that this is LSD is something we must.
You are right.
Wow. Wow.
I remember Nissim had come down to IIT and just called him for reading his book, poetry, etc. And after that, a cup of tea and what, as usual, we couldn't give him anything else. And he talked about, why don't you try this? Why did it? All of us kept quiet, because at IIT that would have been dangerous for us.
I know, in your college to talk about all this. But yeah, I remember, when I was in school, my sister's friends at college were experimenting.
Yeah.
And I was kind of horrified and, well, she didn't. And this is like a Heart of Darkness, Kurtz and all that. You wonder, are you the idiot or are they? Do you not have the imagination and the courage to do this new thing that you've never done before? Or are they the fools who are doing something which is going to harm them?
No. So, nowadays they are thinking of certain drugs. And of course, very, very judicious use. It's being used in treatments, of
Yes, I know.
PTSD
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah.
Have any of you read that book by Mike Pollan, Your Mind on Plants? It's a fascinating book. It's put together all the research in the past 30 or 40 years on the effect of different plants on our psyche. And not necessarily all of them are not addictive. Incidentally, LSD apparently is not addictive, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, apparently. I just read all that. So it would be very, as I said, there is a whole lot of medical interest in this nowadays. A lot of research is going on. But where it's meeting? It's meeting psychologists. Psychologists, as doctors who study the psyche and try to psychological disorders, they are finding that the consciousness expanding properties of drugs in certain circumstances are immensely useful in healing psychical trauma. And now they're finding everything, any problem, any psychological problem is not it's not just something which comes from the outside, it comes from the inside, and it has to be cured from the inside through healing. And the consciousness expanding properties of these drugs help in that healing, apparently.
Interesting.
Mo,
Yeah.
Bhavna Mishra has not spoken. Anna, hey, Anna's around. Anna has not. Shriti Mukherjee has not. Please, ladies.
Would they like to speak? Would they like to?
Anna is there. Come on, Anna.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Mohini. I really enjoyed it. The one thought that came to my mind is it's quite surprising, or that beauty, extreme beauty in any form, kind of evokes thoughts, sad thoughts in us, rather than joyous. As here Keats is hearing this beautiful song, and he's thinking of death and sadness and the way everything, the lack of permanence of everything.
Yes.
But
that aspect.
when you started discussing LSD, that's when I actually feel I had to say something, because I grew up in South Bombay, where lots of young people experimented with all kinds of drugs, LSD being the main one.
Mhm.
And I saw a lot of young minds destroyed by it. Pardon my saying so, it may not be a cool thing to say, but I've seen it,
It's true.
So, I mean, great things can be done with the correct use, but I think that caution is
Yes. Caution
to be
hugely required.
exercised. Guidance is very important. And personally, I don't mind frankly saying I've tried it myself and nothing happened to me. I just had a lot of fun. It was just fun, nothing else. But I have seen other people. So I just wanted to say that, Okay, thanks.
Satish,
Thanks for this lovely thing.
Satish,
Yeah.
Satish,
Yes, I can hear you.
the doorbell rang. Would you like to
Okay.
open the door? Must be
Why
Mehvar.
don't you ask Shriti?
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave now.
Yeah. Shriti, would you like to say anything? And Bhavna? Must be Mehvash. Okay. So by the way, now it is 6:11 only, and I think we're surprised because we're ending so early, and we've had a very leisurely discussion. But initially we had planned that it would be a 1-hour session. So initially, when we started the book club, we said it would be a 1-hour session. And right from the start, it always overflowed beyond the 1 hour into, much more than that. That's Mevash. Yeah.
This is
So this is a good thing. I think it's fine that we finished now. I don't know what Satish is doing. Satish, are you putting Mevash on the screen? Yes, you are. Okay.
I don't know where I am.
This is Mevash boy.
She doesn't know where she is.
Yeah, there she is. And she is going to be in conversation with Devika Rege on the 21st of January, talking about quarter life. Okay. So it struck me this afternoon, that I said, Mehvash is the perfect person. Let me ask her. Now, Mehvash was in Pune. She was in Wadia College. Then she went away to Bangalore for many years, went away to Dubai also for many years, and is recently back in Pune. So I thought, now she's back. We've got her, as it were. But if she will let us have her, that is. So, but luckily, her response was that, yes, she also thought she would be the perfect person. So yay, win-win all round. And yes, she is going to be in conversation with Devika.
And let me give you a bit of information. Devika is going to be speaking at the Jaipur Lit Fest. And
are you going?
And Arifa Tesin is also being invited to the Lit Fest there, Jaipur. So immediately she asked me, are we going or not? No.
We'll have to see how many places can we go to. We work also, I don't know. Do you remember Arifa Tehsin, folks? we had her. She lives in Sri Lanka now. She had presented her own book, which was a collection of her father's stories retold.
I remember the name.
I know Arifa.
Yeah.
In
So
fact,
anyway,
Arifa,
that's her.
we met at a
At
lit fest, and then we kept our relationships going along with all. Anyone who reads a book or likes reading becomes our friends very fast. So don't run away. Talk to Mohini. What
She's in the middle
what
of.
have you been doing?
Are we chatting? I'll come back and chat. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I
Bye,
think we
guys.
should wind. We should wind up. Mehvash, good to have you back.
Yay, good to be back.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for everything. Okay. So,
Thank you, Mohini.
so
Mohini,
the
thank
book is
you.
there, Satish, there.
Thank you.
And next week, on the 17th, we have Sheena Shahani talking about. Sheena, just tell us in 1 minute what you're going to be talking about. Giorgio Gosponidov, is it? Unmute, please. You need to unmute.
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking on Time Shelter by a Bulgarian writer. His name is Georgy Gospodinov, and he won the Booker Prize, International Booker Prize, which is given annually to the best translated fiction every year. So it's quite an interesting book. It's on memory, loss of memory, and all that, which is such a
Interesting.
timely.
Sounds
and,
definitely interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye. 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 That's our copy, okay? You told her, no? It's not a library copy, it's our copy.
Our copy.
Okay, folks. Tata, we'll sign off now. See you next Sunday for this very
Bye.
book that Sheena is going to be presenting. Thank you, everybody. Tata.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Priyana, thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Priyana. So we'll connect early next week, a little early,
Yeah, we'll connect early.
or maybe in the
next week, yeah.
morning. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Or maybe the day before.
Yeah. Fine. You let
Hi,
me know
Sheena.
the busy person. Hi.
Oh, please
Yeah.
don't say that. And
Okay.
Mohini ma'am,
So
I'm
how
looking
do
forward
I
to the rest of the words. Huh?
how do
Bye.
I send the presentation to you? Because shall I send it by Google Transfer?
Just email it to me. No?
Email.
Yeah, but it's a big file.
That's okay.
So
You
it'll
can email
come.
it. It will go
Okay.
by email. If it
Yeah.
doesn't upload it
Pen
on Drive,
drive.
send the link. It's fine. Anything's fine.
Okay. I'll do that. Great.
Mohini ma'am,
And my
have
book
been-
is going to be the swan song of 2023, as I mentioned earlier.
Oh,
Which one?
last book.
This one. This is the
She
last.
says, Sheena says it's the last presentation she'll make. That's what she's saying.
We won't
I
tell
hope
her.
not.
No,
I
I'm
hope
ending.
not.
We
What
won't
can I
let her.
say?
I'm ending the year with it. That's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
ending the
That's all
year.
now. Okay, good. Thank
This
heavens.
is a swan song, right, for 2023.
Ah,
Yes.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Friana, what were you saying? I couldn't hear.
I was saying I've missed poetry a lot in the last year or two, and I was just really happy to hear you.
Oh, good.
take these stuff.
There you are. Good.
So I'm looking
I
forward to
just
the
wanted to
rest
say
4
something
words.
on. Sorry.
Like
I
I'm looking forward to the
forward to more
remaining 4 words, huh, ma'am?
No, I
You have
can't
to
hear
do the other
Friana
4.
clearly,
Yeah.
but I would like Friana to present us a book also in the next 3 months.
Next 3 months. So
Yes, you got
tall
3
in
months.
order. Very tall in order.
No, it's not
I'll
tall in
try.
order. Go ahead.
You
I'll
know, I
try.
read when I studied or read Nightingale. We were all in our teens, right? I remember thinking even at that time that this guy sounds so depressed. He really
Depressed
sounds
is an
so depressed.
understatement.
Yeah,
That's an
and then
understatement.
like that's what I thought at that time. That he sounds so dejected, so ready to fly off himself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, but then he got his wish, right? He has become immortal. It's 200 years now.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm sure that we will continue, generations will continue. I don't see him going away. I don't see any of this work going away.
True,
Right?
true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Nice
Thank
to
you, Sheena. Thank you,
and
Friana.
see you on Sunday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you all on
Okay.
All the
Sunday.
very best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Priyana, you could think of presenting a poem.
I'm told of that.
Ma'am,
Done.
I
Something
love
done.
listening to poems. I love dissecting poems, but explaining them is a task. I am not sure if I'm up to it.
We'll do it. Don't worry. Mohini will help you do it.
I'll look into it for sure because I have a lot of poems I would love to discuss. I thoroughly enjoy poetry, so
Good. Okay.
maybe someday.
Oh,
Great.
yes, that's a good idea. I
Okay.
think it could be a
I'm
good
glad
idea.
you're putting it
Poetry.
up with-
So today was a very good turnout, I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but many people had
unexpected.
come.
I
That's
hope
a
I
good
get
That
story.
at
happens with
least,
classics though.
I
That
hope I
usually
get at
happens with
least,
classics.
I hope I get at least 15 people next week.
No,
In
don't
fact,
worry. Don't worry.
Satish
That's all
told
right.
me, he said, you may not get many people, okay? So I said, yeah, I know. I mean, so you just trundle on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when at Gyanadab, I was doing something and, oh yeah, the first meeting we had of Between the Lines, which is the classics meeting. I wondered if anyone would be interested and if anyone would come at all. And we had so many people that we didn't have enough chairs. People sat on the floor and whatnot.
Ma'am, I think the thing is that
60.
when we are doing classics, I think people have read them, people know them, so they just want to come and revisit the experience. And that is why people turn up for classics more. When it becomes a contemporary thing, it's like you need to read it first to understand it, or they come with that sort of mindset. So
Yes,
if they
you
don't
said
have
it
the
right.
time to go through it, then they will probably just not make it to the meeting and be like, okay, I've not read the book. What will my inputs be? I don't understand what's going on. With classics, everybody knows everything. They're just coming here to revisit, to relive memories to a certain
No,
extent.
that is, yeah, you're right. That is one way of looking at it. I mean, frankly, new books I like to come to even if I haven't read them. Like Tina's book, I'm not going to be able to read it. I
No.
mean, I don't have it. I don't know where to get it, and etc. So I'm gonna be there because I want to know about it.
You
I
can
mean, that's
always
my
borrow
sense.
it. You can always borrow it from me after next week.
Exactly. I would like
The
to. I
thing
would like to
is,
do that.
the thing
But I
is,
will
it will
listen
take a
because
long time to read. But maybe after my talk, you might
that'll
want to.
help, right? It'll be like
Yeah.
an introduction given already.
Yeah.
So I mean, this book club thing I love because I feel if you have read it, it's very fruitful and productive to join the discussion. If you haven't read it, you learn about it. I think it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
I'm
You
all
know,
in.
I just thought of something. Why don't we do a survey? If somebody can make a survey and find out from our book club members how many books of the year they've actually gone back and read. So we put all the 25 titles. Have you read
We could do
this?
that.
Tick,
If
tick,
somebody
tick,
can
tick.
send me the list, I can make it in the next 15 minutes. It's not that
I
hard.
really don't know how many I've read. Do you right
No, you
now?
put it in the WhatsApp group. No, you put the questionnaire in the WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
And then
Sheena,
you go, yeah,
And they
it's-
reply to
Sheena,
one of
in my room
us.
right now, there are 4 books. There are in the hall. There are something like 4 and 6, 10, 14, and 2, 3 lying around. So all those books are pending to be read.
all
And you-
TBRs. Yeah, me too. I've got 4 there,
Yeah.
6 there. My husband is fed up of me. He says,
Even I have around a
sometimes,
dozen left in
books
my
are
cupboard.
falling on the head now.
Really, they're just oozing from everywhere. Oh, well, it's a good thing.
Right, I'll lend it to you after I finish.
Please
Sheena,
do.
thank you.
Please do.
Thanks for that. Priya, thank you
Mhm.
very much. We
Thank
didn't see
you.
your boyfriend at the last time.
I don't have a boyfriend, sir. I have told you
Ah,
this. I don't have a
Sarvati hai.
boyfriend. If I have one, I'll bring him to meet you. I promise you that. I don't have one as of yet. I really don't.
Okay, chalo.
All the best. Take
Off
care.
we go.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you, everyone. Yeah,
See you next
bye.
Sunday.
Bye.
Ta-ta. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.